It's really interesting. We've got some great material here from listeners, all centered on this big question. How do we actually succeed at work and have a life that feels, well, worthwhile?
Exactly. We're diving into Win at Work and Succeed at Life by Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller, and its translation too.
Right. And our mission today is basically to sift through it all, pull out the most valuable, actionable stuff to help everyone navigate these competing demands without feeling totally, swamped.
Absolutely. And the core idea, the big takeaway really, is that it's not a zero-sum game. You don't have to choose.
Never a first life, yeah.
Right. It's possible to win in both areas.
Yeah.
And it's not just fluff. You've got endorsements from people like John Townsend, the
Yeah.
boundaries guy,
Oh, yeah, solid.
and Bruce Daisley, former VP at Twitter X. They're highlighting the practical advice here, the potential for a real change in productivity, but also in relationships.
Okay, let's start with a really powerful story from Michael Hyatt himself. Right at the beginning, he talks about getting this huge bonus.
Huge, yeah. Like bigger than his salary?
Exactly. And he rushes home, super excited to tell his wife, Gail. But instead of a celebration, he gets tears, years of resentment just pouring out.
Wow.
It's a total gut punch.
And it lays bare the personal cost of that intense work focus. It really sets the stage for why this whole work-life thing is so incredibly critical.
It absolutely does. That story is such a stark illustration of how easily things get out of whack and the real damage it can do to the people closest to us. Which brings us right to this central problem the sources tackle, the cult of overwork.
Right. This idea that's just baked into our culture, more hours equals more success, more value.
Yeah.
But the picture painted here is pretty grim, actually.
Very grim. You hear about physical exhaustion. There's even an example of someone, Kyle, actually collapsing.
Just collapsing, wow.
And then there's the burnout we all hear about, plus the strain on relationships, like Hyatt's own marriage troubles. That statistic is sobering, too. 75% of professionals feel stress is damaging their connections.
75%, that's huge. It is. And the sources get specific about the health impacts, too. Working over 55 hours a week, they link that to a 13% higher risk of heart attack
13%.
and a 33% higher risk of stroke. And that's just the big stuff. Think about the daily grind, headaches, stomach issues, high blood pressure. All sorts of stress-related problems just chipping away at your well-being.
And it's not even like it makes people happier at work, is it? That Yale study you mentioned.
Right, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence.
Yeah, 20% of employees were super engaged, really into their jobs, but also suffering from severe burnout.
Exactly. Highly engaged, but totally running on fumes. It just shows that loving your job doesn't make you immune to the dangers of overworking.
Good point.
And technology, well, that's a huge part of it now. The sources point to smart devices blurring the lines. One study from Korea found they added over 11 hours to the average work week.
Just from the devices.
Apparently so, just always being connected. Another study suggested executives can easily top 70 hours a week because of it. It's like we're always on the clock.
It really feels like that sometimes. But here's the kicker. All those extra hours, are they even, effective, the research seems to say? Maybe not.
Well, more than maybe not. Productivity actually seems to decline after about 50 hours a week.
So you hit a wall.
Pretty much. And those crazy 70, 80-hour weeks, they don't necessarily lead to better results than fewer, more focused hours. There was even a finding that for knowledge workers, it might only be about 6 truly productive hours a day.
6 hours. That really makes you question those all-nighters, doesn't it?
It definitely should. It challenges that whole more time equals more output idea we have ingrained. So if overwork is so bad for us, physically, mentally, relationally, why do we do it? What's the pull?
Okay, yeah, good question. What makes overwork so appealing? The sources dig into this.
One reason, and it might sound a bit counterintuitive, is simply enjoyment.
Enjoyment. Like, people actually like working that much.
Well, yeah, sometimes. Ryan Event from The Economist even joked, "The joke I'm finally beginning to understand is that work is fun, especially for knowledge workers," right? The work itself can be really engaging. Collaborating on tricky problems, using your brain, there's a real satisfaction there, like craftsmanship.
Like being an artisan of code or strategy or whatever it is you do. I get that.
Exactly. And it ties into deeper things, too, beyond just the paycheck. Personal growth, identity.
Maslow's hierarchy stuff. Self-realization through work.
Precisely. Alain de Botton even put work right up there with love as a major source of life's meaning.
Wow. High praise.
It provides purpose, shapes how we see ourselves. Overcoming challenges at work feels good, right? It creates this positive loop.
Yeah, accomplishment feels good.
But the danger, of course, is when work becomes the only thing providing that feeling.
Right, crowding everything else out. What else pulls us in?
There's the concept of flow. Mahali's, 6 Cent Mahali's idea.
Oh yeah, getting totally lost in something challenging.
Exactly. That feeling of complete immersion, losing track of time. Work can be a prime place to experience that. Some studies suggest people find flow more often at work than in their free time.
More than leisure. That's surprising.
It is, but again, that intense gratification can make it easy to neglect other stuff.
Okay, this next one. Work as an escape from chores. That sounds familiar.
Huh. Yeah, Tim Crater called it the busy trap. It's not just being addicted to being busy, but maybe sometimes avoiding the laundry pile or the dishes.
Guilty as charged sometimes. Work feels neater, more controllable than household chaos.
It offers clear progress, measurable results. Laundry is endless. And as the sources hint, this can play out differently depending on gender roles, too. We might touch on that later.
Okay. What else? Status.
Definitely. Being busy has become a weird kind of status symbol, hasn't it?
How are you? Oh, crazy busy.
Yeah, it implies you're important, in demand.
Exactly. Florence King noted how it makes people feel needed, but also kind of stressed and deprived at the same time. It's odd. And then there's just the modern world. FOMO. Fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely. The constant notifications, the pressure to be always on, always responsive. It feels risky to disconnect.
You might miss that crucial email, that vital update.
Right. The boundaries are just gone. It creates this constant low-level anxiety.
And finally, this treadmill effect. Can you explain that?
Sure. So you reach a big work goal. You should feel great, right? But sometimes there's this emptiness. Like, okay, now what?
Yeah, the goal's achieved, the project's done.
Right. Philosopher Kiran Satya said, a planned success is the death of the plan itself. The excitement fades, you feel adrift. So you set a new goal, jump back on the treadmill.
Chasing the next high, the next accomplishment.
Exactly. If work is your main source of meaning, the absence of a work goal feels bad. So you keep setting new ones, perpetuating the cycle. All these things, enjoyment, growth, flow, escape, status, FOMO, the treadmill they make, overwork, really seductive.
Which makes consciously choosing something different absolutely essential. Which brings us to principle number 1.
Right. Principle 1. Life has multiple centers. Work is just one.
And they use Elon Musk as a big example here. Visionary guy, CEO of huge companies, incredible wealth.
Undeniable success, yeah.
But he's also known for pushing this extreme work ethic, 80, 100 hours a week.
Right. And the sources contrast that professional success with the pretty significant impact on his personal life.
Yeah. His first wife, Justine, talked about him being obsessed, feeling ignored.
Emotionally absent even when physically there. The marriage ended, and apparently his kids have felt the impact too. He's even admitted not spending enough quality time trying to multitask work when he is with them. It's a stark picture of imbalance.
And the real irony, the book points out, is that so much research contradicts the idea that those crazy hours actually lead to better results anyway.
Exactly. There's that point of diminishing returns. Plus the burnout risk, the toll on health, relationships, everything else.
So Musk might think he's getting 3 times as much done, but the evidence suggests that's unlikely in the long run. It often leads to worse cognitive function, more mistakes.
Precisely. Which leads to the core idea of this principle. Life is bigger than work. The sources outline, what, 9 key areas?
At least 9, yeah. Beyond work, there's spiritual, intellectual, emotional, physical.
Your marriage or partnership, parenting, social life, friendships.
Hobbies and interests, avocational they call it, and financial well-being too. It's a whole constellation.
And Megan Hyatt Miller shares her own story here, growing up with a father who was often absent because of work.
Right, and how much responsibility fell on her shoulders as a result. It really drives home the point about not letting work dominate everything, especially family.
Her story shows the ripple effects, how workaholism impacts everyone. And the stats back it up. Professionals checking emails during dinner, on vacation. It's become normal.
It's like work becomes your entire identity, almost a religion, especially if you're passionate about what you do.
But the message is clear. Meaningful work is great, but a meaningful life is much broader. Remember, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
And potentially damages Jack's health and relationships, too. So how do we start shifting that focus? What are the first steps?
Well, the sources introduce what they call the 3 non-negotiable priorities. Basically, you have to proactively schedule time for the really important stuff.
Instead of just letting work fill up the calendar.
Exactly. Intentionally carve out space. And those 3 non-negotiables are self-care, key relationships, and professional results.
Okay, self-care. That always feels like the first thing to go when things get busy. It feels
Mhm.
like a luxury.
But the book argues it's absolutely foundational,
Yeah.
and it's not just bubble baths and massages, right? It's broader.
Mental, emotional, relational health, even managing your time and resources well. Amy Jinsu calls it a whole spectrum,
Right. And neglecting it leads to burnout, poor performance, just generally being less effective.
whereas prioritizing it gives you more energy, resilience, makes you better at everything else.
Definitely. And they highlight 3 key foundations for self-care. First, sleep. We'll talk more about that later.
Oh.
Second, nutrition. Fueling your brain.
Mhm.
It only takes up 2% of body weight, but uses 20% of our energy. What you eat directly impacts how your brain works, your mood.
Makes sense. And third,
Physical activity, even just low-intensity stuff like walking. It's linked to better brain function, stimulating new brain cell growth.
and that Finnish twin study even linked it to higher income.
Intriguing, right. So it's not about becoming a marathon runner overnight, just consistent movement.
Hmm.
The big takeaway is self-care isn't selfish, it's essential maintenance.
Okay, non-negotiable number 2, key relationships.
This is about deliberately investing time and energy in your most important connections. Spouse, partner, kids, close friends.
The sources mention higher divorce rates among executives and entrepreneurs. That's worrying.
It highlights the strain overwork puts on partnerships. And neglecting kids, especially when they're young, can have long-term consequences.
And friendships, too. Aristotle called friends crucial for a good life. Michael Hyatt even admitted he didn't really have close friends until later in life.
It shows how easily those connections can fade if they aren't actively nurtured.
Okay, and the third non-negotiable, professional results. This isn't about not working, obviously.
Right, you still need to achieve things at work, but the emphasis is on focusing on the most important tasks, the things that really make a difference, not just busy work.
Like that Charles Hummel quote, "Our problem is we aim too low and hit.
Mm,
Prioritize the big rocks."
exactly. Effectiveness over just being busy. So scheduling time for self-care, relationships, and high-impact work creates a structure that protects these vital areas.
Which leads nicely into principle number 2.
Principle 2, boundaries create freedom.
This one really struck me. That story about Tiffany and Paul, the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, amazing story.
They focused on their strengths, set clear boundaries, and their business grew 60% in 2 years, while they actually worked less.
It totally flips the script, doesn't it? More hours does not always equal more success.
And the idea that constraints can actually boost creativity? That's fascinating.
Yeah, research by Oguz Akar suggests constraints force you to dig deeper, to not just grab the first easy solution.
Like Katrina Hot Trump said, limits narrow your choices initially, but make you explore the remaining options more thoroughly.
It reminded me of that artist, Phil Hansen, who developed a tremor. The limitation forced him into whole new creative territory.
And Hyatt's own company trying a 6-hour workday. And finding people became more focused and efficient.
It's a powerful real-world example. When time is limited, you get laser-focused on what matters. You plan better.
So the long-term benefits are huge. Less burnout, better well-being, and ultimately a more sustainable success, both at work and home.
Absolutely. It makes me think of Warren Buffett's famous line.
Oh, the one about saying no?
Yeah. The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything.
Oh.
It's all about protecting your focus.
So boundaries aren't walls, they're like guardrails. Protecting your time and energy for what's most important.
Exactly. And the book gives practical tips. Be clear, be consistent, be firm but flexible, and explain the why to people affected.
Makes sense. Okay, principle number 3. Work-life balance is a dynamic process.
Right. This tackles the idea that balance isn't some perfect static state you achieve and then you're done.
Like Megan Hyatt Miller's pad thai story. That was great.
Yeah. Ordering spice level 3 thinking it's the perfect balance, but it turns out way too high.
It's such a good analogy. You aim for balance, but reality means constant adjustment, tweaking things based on circumstances.
Exactly. And the sources acknowledge people are skeptical about work-life balance. Some call it a myth, an illusion.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
But the counter-argument is, work can be good and meaningful, but you still need intentional effort to make space for everything else. Martha Stewart said balance is hard, but it's not about achieving perfection.
It's more like a tightrope walker, always making tiny adjustments.
That's a great analogy they use. Or Myra Strober's idea of a rocket constantly correcting its course. It requires constant attention, conscious choices, planning. It's human-made, not automatic.
You have to actively create it.
And it involves trade-offs. You might have to consciously protect your health, like Dick Costello prioritizing exercise even as CEO.
Or safeguard family time, given those divorce stats and the impact on kids.
In friendships, Aristotle saw friends as vital. They can easily get neglected if you're not intentional.
The sources also mention the extra challenges women often face, right? This societal expectation to manage household stuff on top of careers.
Yes, they reference important work by Bridget Schultz and Anne-Marie Slaughter on that persistent imbalance. It's a real factor for many.
But it's not impossible. That story about Melanie Healy at P&G.
Right. Successfully negotiating a more balanced schedule after maternity leave. It shows advocacy and communication can work.
So true balance isn't about perfect equilibrium. It's about investing in what's truly meaningful and constantly adjusting along the way.
Precisely. Which brings us to principle 4. Rest fuels productivity.
Ah, rest. The thing we feel guilty about. But this flips that idea on its head.
Totally. They start with J.K. Rowling getting the idea for Harry Potter during a 4-hour train delay.
Amazing. Just unexpected downtime sparks this world-changing idea.
It perfectly shows the power of white space, or nothing time. The brain's default mode network kicks in during rest.
That's when the creative connections happen, when you're not actively trying.
Exactly. It processes things in the background, makes links, walking, swimming, gardening, activities that let your mind wander.
Our brains need that downtime to sort things out, make sense of stuff, but we feel so pressured to be doing something productive all the time.
That societal discomfort is real, feeling guilty if you don't answer an email instantly, even on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But the sources give great examples of stopping, leading to breakthroughs. Amy, the Bordeaux counselor.
Oh, yeah. She took 2 weeks off, did nothing in her backyard, and rediscovered her passion, started a successful practice.
Incredible. And Tamara, the Verizon engineer, had a multi-million-dollar idea during a 6-hour flight delay.
Just sitting there waiting.
And Roy Barberi, developing profitable software by scheduling time for non-work thinking.
These aren't just accidents, they involve stepping away, even Google's 20% time.
Right. Giving engineers time for passion projects led to Gmail, Google News. Major innovations came from that white space.
So rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's actually a crucial part of it. It fuels creativity, problem solving, makes you better when you are working.
Absolutely essential. Which leads perfectly into the final principle, maybe the most fundamental. High performance rests on sleep.
Sleep, the ultimate rest. And probably the most neglected. That story about Tanya, the CEO.
Yeah, third-generation CEO, incredibly driven, supporting her kids, trying to make it in a male-dominated field.
And getting less than 2 hours of sleep a night. That's terrifying.
It is. And the impact was clear on her well-being, her thinking, her decisions.
The sources really break down the damage sleep deprivation does, don't they?
Across the board. Physical health, mental and emotional state, memory, judgment, creativity, even IQ. Tara Sart's research suggests one all-nighter can impair you like you have a learning disability.
Wow. And for the kind of complex work most professionals do innovation, problem-solving skimping on sleep is just shooting yourself in the foot.
Completely. Penelope Lewis's research shows it hinders creativity and makes you stick to bad strategies. Your actual neuron activity decreases.
And it impacts how you interact with people, too.
Big time. You misinterpret cues, overreact emotionally, trust breaks down. Nick Van Dam and Els van der Helm highlighted that in McKinsey Quarterly. It damages relationships.
And the worst part is you might not even realize how bad it is.
Exactly. Robert Stickgold pointed out that the part of your brain that recognizes poor performance is one of the first to go when you're sleep deprived. You lose perspective.
So you think you're doing okay, but you're really not.
Precisely. The book reframes sleep beautifully, not as an annoying end of the day, but as the essential foundation for an effective day.
Like that interpretation of Genesis rest actually precedes work in the cycle.
It's a powerful shift. Sleep isn't what you do after work, it's what enables good work.
So, practical tips.
Consistent schedule is key. Relaxing bedtime routine, they mention prayer, but it could be reading, meditating, whatever works. And maybe use sleep trackers, but carefully, don't get obsessed with perfect sleep, that orthosomnia.
Right, don't add stress about sleep itself.
The core message is undeniable. Sleep isn't a luxury, it's non-negotiable for high performance and well-being.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive really hammers home that winning at work and succeeding at life, it's actually possible.
It is. Those 5 principles provide a roadmap. Remember, life has many centers. Use boundaries to create freedom, see balance as dynamic, know that rest fuels productivity, and understand high performance rests on sleep.
And Michael Hyatt's own example of taking that 30-day disconnect every summer.
Yeah, his annual review, completely stepping away. That anecdote about watching the sunrise with Gail in Wyoming, it captures the richness you gain when you embrace life outside work.
It really boils down to making conscious choices, doesn't it? Standing on your own side, as Anne Lamott says, supporting your own well-being.
Absolutely. The advice is practical. Say no more often. Renegotiate commitments that aren't working. Actively shape your life towards that desire zone where your passion meets your proficiency.
And for leaders listening,
Model good boundaries yourself. Consolidate priorities for your team. Don't just pile things on. Give them autonomy. Foster that win-win culture.
so maybe some questions for everyone listening to ponder. Where are you right now on this work-life spectrum, feeling that pressure to overwork?
Are key relationships feeling the strain? Is your health suffering? Are you making time for rest, for joy, for things outside your job description?
What kind of future do you really want? One where work and life don't just coexist, but actually enhance each other.
Because the message here is ultimately hopeful. You can create that future. It takes intention, conscious choices, prioritizing what truly matters across your whole life.
A big thank you, of course, to everyone whose insights went into the source material: Gail Hyatt, Joel Miller, Bob DeMoss, all the clients, coaches, authors mentioned. Their collective wisdom is invaluable. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.